It all started as an urban legend. Something most think is only smoke and mirrors. Just old tales that exist only to scare you for a good laugh. Nothing ever meant to be taken seriously, except by those who are stupid enough to do so. Someone like me. How dumb I was, thinking I could solve the mystery of the ancient landmark known as Death Mountain. A mountain said to be inhabited by more than just bushes and trees. Hell no. It is far from just a landmark composed of bushes and trees. It is a living hell. But you'd only know this if you lived to tell the tale. Most don't. Every person that ever ventured onto the mountain in the past never returned. Many theories of how the mountain became a living hell existed, but I know the real reason. Yet, I haven't dared to speak of my experience on that mountain. Until now. It all started in the summer of 2009. I was only 15 then, wanting adventure in my life. I was stupid, thinking that I was invincible to anyone or anything, when literally, I was the most invincible asshole around. I cheated on multiple girls, stole money from my parents, and had already been in juvie 5 times. With just that information, you can already guess what kind of person I was. I was the biggest disgrace around, breaking rules and not giving a shit less about what I did or what I was doing with my life. Don't ask how I even had friends, but I did. 2 other disgraces named Terry and Ashley. I guess you can kind of blame them for my behavior, but then again, I was the one who followed their actions, so it was mostly me. Terry was a nerdy asshole. Smart, yet one of the worst people born into this world. A strange combination, but Terry is nothing compared to Ashley. Where to start with Ashley? She's a heavy drinker, smoker, constantly was smoking a joint or shooting that black tar shit into her veins. Ashley was a lost soul with zero respect for anybody. But it was only because she had no guidance in her life. It's sad, but at that time, I could care less about anyone except myself. Now, you're probably wondering how I ended up on Death Mountain. Well, it was summer, meaning kids were out doing stupid shit for a thrill. My parents didn't want to deal with the cops or me, so I was sent to my grandparents' house in the small town of Sunnydale. Believe me, I did not want to go, but I was forced. Upon arriving, Sunnydale just seemed like an old mining town, meaning most who lived there were elderly, something I found as an advantage in my favor. It would be easy to get out of the house and explore, seeing my grandparents were as deaf as everything. The location of their home was right at the base of Death Mountain, but I didn't know until my grandpa told me about the mountain. He told me the supposed legend of the mountain, that the mountain used to be the home of a long-lost town. But one day, it just vanished after a local miner discovered a mine filled with an endless amount of gold. The mine was said to have an amount of gold that could not even be determined, and was hidden somewhere upon the mountain. However, if anyone were to find the mine, they die of a natural cause and remain within the mine as another victim of the mysterious force that haunted the mountain. Being a teenager, I didn't believe in urban legends. I had performed the Bloody Mary ritual before, along with any other supposed urban legend. I never believed in the supernatural, and this tale was nothing short of any other bullshit story I had heard before. Boy, was I so very wrong. The first night at my grandparents' house, I attempted to sleep, but that was completely impossible. From just outside the window next to my bed, I could hear a soft voice, but not just any normal voice. It was mostly the sound of a young girl, probably around the age of 8 or 10. She'd recite a song that I immediately recognized as Ring Around the Rosie, which I knew was a song in reference to the Black Death. I tried putting my pillow over my head, but it was clear that I wasn't going to get any rest. Finally, I just decided to confront the kid, so I opened my window, expecting to see a kid. I was shocked to see that there was absolutely nothing. But due to me not believing in the supernatural, I figured the girl had just taken off. The thing was that I had not seen a single kid in town when I arrived. I decided not to think of it, closed the window, and attempted to go back to sleep. The room was quiet for several minutes, until just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard something that scared me to death. A raspy growl right next to my ear. The growl had scared me awake. Seeing this was no light growl, but a loud growl. Once again, I figured it was just the house making a strange sound, even though I knew it was something else. I couldn't sleep the entire night, not after that growl. Strange enough though, the rest of the night was dead quiet. Little did I know, this was only a small sample of what was to come. I was relieved when the sun came up, and wasn't even tired, seeing this wasn't my first time being up all night. The experience from partying all night with Terry and Ashley had helped me there, but I was still shaken up from whatever I had heard the night before. I decided to keep it to myself mostly, for now anyway. I didn't say a word to Grandma or Grandpa, ate my provided breakfast, and decided to explore the town. The town was tiny, so you could not get lost. Most of the houses in the town were either empty or just trashed. But the thing I was looking for was if there was any kids that lived there. Throughout the town, I didn't come across anything that would signify the presence of kids. But there was an old elementary school, so kids did live there once. The school was completely in ruins now, and after searching the entire town, I didn't find one kid. I didn't want to believe I had heard the spirit of a young girl, seeing I was too cool to believe in such things. How else could I have heard the clear voice of a young girl singing Ring Around the Rosie? No old house could sing a song. Having nowhere else to go, I decided to go to the most populated place in the town, the local market. The local market seemed just like any other abandoned building, but seeing there was many vehicles parked outside, it was far from abandoned. Inside the building, it smelled like rotting wood. See, the place was composed of wood that had gone rotten over the years. A clear danger hazard, but I didn't say anything. Just approached an older man, probably in his 80s or 70s.
"Well, you're quite the youngster now, ain't you?"
he said to me. What he said was completely unexpected, but it didn't bother me, due to it being true that I was indeed the youngest person in the entire town.
"Don't judge me.
I'm only here to ask a few questions," I replied back. I sounded like a total asshole, and was surprised that he even answered me.
"Well, sonny, depends on what sort of questions you have,"
he replied back. I was completely upfront about it, seeing I wanted out of that building. I felt as if the beams were going to give in any second and trap me in this godforsaken place.
Simple.
Are there any kids living in this town? I asked. The man gave me a strange look, one look that made me feel uncomfortable. Then he erupted into a giggle.
"They all ask that,"
he replied, continuing to giggle.
"Looks like Rosie likes you."
His response made me feel more uncomfortable than I already was. I had no idea what he even meant. "What are you talking about, man?" I asked him.
"The old miner's daughter, Rosie, is taking a liking to you,"
he confirmed.
"She always liked the youngsters."
"Then how come I've never seen her?" I asked.
"She's been dead for years,"
he confirmed.
"She died along with the lost town."
At that time, I was lost for words. I didn't know if the old man was just crazy, or if the ghost of a young girl had made friends with me. Either way, I was completely shocked. So I took my leave and returned to my grandparents' house. The rest of that day, I didn't think of anything except what that old man had told me. I had no idea what to believe, whether Rosie was real or not. I kept it to myself mostly, not wanting a lecture from Grandpa. For the rest of the day, I just sat in my provided room. Due to there being no internet, I couldn't text, I couldn't watch YouTube, or access any social media, so I just listened to my MP3 player, eventually falling into a sleep. It wasn't long before I woke back up. Through my earphones, I heard something that made my spine quiver. It was the giggle of the little girl, which I knew was Rosie. However, things only got scarier, as a familiar tune that I didn't have on my MP3 player had begun to play. It was Ring Around the Rosie. So I wasted no time, tugged my earphones out of my ears, shut off the device, and threw the device back into my backpack. After all that had happened that day, I just wanted to rest it off. And surprisingly, the starting hours of the night were quiet. Maybe, just maybe, I could get some rest. That idea was all but diminished at the sound of Ring Around the Rosie being sung in the voice of that little girl once again. I wasn't sure what to do about it, seeing she wasn't even alive and I still didn't believe that I was hearing a spirit. I decided to sit on my bed and hope for Rosie to just wander off. But for 3 goddamn hours, all I heard was Ring Around the Rosie. I had grown tired of being outsmarted by a little girl, so I decided to face Rosie head on. I exited the room, walked to the side door of the house, opened it, and stepped out into the night. Outside, I could still hear the song being recited, so I moved towards the side of the house slowly, not wanting Rosie to escape. The singing continued as I rounded the side of the house, only to discover absolutely nothing. There was no sign of anything, no footprints, no nothing. I didn't know if I was hearing things, dreaming, or if Rosie really was a spirit. It was what I saw next that made me finally realize I was dealing with otherworldly forces. Seeing nothing was there, I just turned to go back into the house, until I was stopped by something. Something that scared me more than anything I had ever seen before. In front of me was a creature of some sort. It stood at least 10 feet tall, had long arms and legs, blood-red eyes, and rows of jagged teeth that dripped blood. Before I could even react, the creature grabbed my arm. I couldn't even explain the pain that I felt through my struggle to escape the creature's grasp, but it was clear that that creature did not want to let me go. I thought I was going to die as I collapsed to the ground and began to cry from the burning sensation I felt on my right forearm. I had been burned before, but this pain was unlike anything I had ever felt before. I thought I was dead until the burning sensation finally stopped, and the creature vanished into thin air. My screams for help were so loud that I had awoken my grandma and grandpa. When they found me on the ground, holding my forearm and crying, they immediately just took me back into the house. They took one look at what had been branded on my arm by the creature, and immediately, I could tell something was wrong. My grandparents' expressions were unlike any expression I had ever seen before. I just knew that whatever that creature had branded on my arm was bad. My grandparents had no answer to what was branded on my arm, but they did tell me that they had seen it before on the arms of children that had went missing from Sunnydale. I was speechless. That's where all the children had went. My grandparents then asked me a question that I knew was coming. Had I heard Rosie's song? I didn't lie to them and just told them the truth. I told them everything. The looks on their faces were looks of horror and panic. They were so scared. So, they just told me to go to my room and stay there. Otherwise, I would end up like the other lost children that had become victims of Rosie. They also told me to stay away from the mountain. I didn't retaliate and just listened. I had no idea what to think, except to stay away from that goddamn mountain, and for once in my goddamn life, listen to someone other than myself. I just wanted to go home. But little did I know, I never could go home, because once I heard Rosie's song, I was trapped forever. But little did I know, this was only the beginning. That entire night, I couldn't sleep. Not after all that had happened. I had confronted a beast of some sort, and was now sitting in confusion and fear, staring at the mark on my arm. It was a pitch-black brand that looked like some sort of symbol you'd see in ancient ruins. The strange thing about it, though, was that it didn't have the consistency of a burn. It was more like the consistency of a tattoo. But it didn't itch, nor sting. Still, that's all I could think of that entire night, while listening sharply for Rosie. I still had no idea of who or what Rosie was, nor what she wanted. She seemed harmless, but even an ungrateful asshole like me knew that you should never trust something, even if it does seem harmless. The worker at the market had claimed that it was a miner's daughter that had died along with the rest of the lost town, but Even I was starting to question if that truly was the case. I had to find out more about this Rosie, but I had no idea where to even go for answers. And I wasn't sure if it was even safe to go searching around the town again, especially after being confronted by some sort of demonic creature. Yet, at the same time, I couldn't just sit there and expect my questions to be answered. If anything, sitting in fear would have just complicated things even more. Coming to a conclusion, I stood up from my bed, slipped my shoes on, and proceeded to opening the bedroom door. I tried turning the handle, but for some reason, the door wouldn't even budge. And at first suspicion, I thought it was just jammed, considering its age. To nudge the door, I just slammed my shoulder against it a few times and figured that would have budged it. But once I attempted to turn the knob, once again, the door wouldn't budge. That's when I realized that my grandparents had locked me in the room, and I immediately started to question why I had been locked in the room. Was it because they were scared of me, or what had attacked me the night before?
Hey, Grandma! Grandpa!
I yelled loud, seeing their hearing wasn't the best. But after 2 minutes, there was no response.
Hey! Open the goddamn door!
I waited and waited until I realized that they were gone, and I was left alone, like a feral animal locked in a cage. I had been left to die of dehydration and starvation, and unless I got out, that would be my fate. What the hell did this symbol mean on my forearm? Whatever it meant, it was enough to persuade my grandparents to leave me for dead. I wasn't going to die like this, and seeing the window was fragile, I immediately resorted to that being my escape route. I just grabbed something strong enough to break the glass and quickly threw it as hard as I could, immediately hearing the glass shatter. I thought I was home free, until I noticed something else blocking the window. Sets of 2x4 boards covered the opening to the window, immediately causing my heart to drop. How in the world had I not heard the boards being assembled? I was awake the entire goddamn night. But then was not the time for questions. So I resorted to the only other way out of the room. I'd have to break the door down. I didn't know if the opening behind the door had been covered as well, so I decided to check. If the door was hollow, nothing was behind it, so I checked by knocking 2 times. The door was hollow, and if I hit it hard enough, I could break the locks easily. I didn't waste no time and backed up as far as I could, and rushed as fast as I could to the door, hitting it with a hard thud. The impact was like running into a solid brick wall, and I felt as if my shoulder had come out of the socket. I quickly pulled up my shirt sleeve to check, and luckily for me, my shoulder was still in socket. But I still couldn't move or feel my entire arm. I was just about to panic until I decided to run a little test to determine if my shoulder was dead or not. I pinched my arm, and luckily for me, I felt it, meaning my arm was just in a small state of shock. I was relieved until I remembered that both my escape routes were dead in the water. Out of frustration, I started punching the 2x4 boards, hoping for them to break, but the boards didn't even dent. All I had caused was cuts on my knuckles and for my strength to drain massively. I really thought I was going to die there, in that room, in that prison. I tried to think of any other possible way out, but nothing came. So to savor the moment, I reached under the bed to grab my backpack, but I managed to feel something just beyond the backpack. Something cold. I thank God to this day that I reached that far. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling this story to you. I examined the cold object with my hand more and more until I realized what it was. It was a handle to something. All the pain in my knuckles and shoulder diminished in that moment as I moved the bed toward the door, revealing exactly what I suspected. It was a wooden trapdoor. The handle was rusty, meaning that trapdoor had been there a long time. My guess was centuries. Possibly decades. At that time, I didn't care, because to me, it was a way out of the room. I tugged on the handle, feeling no resistance, meaning it was open. The trapdoor opened with no issues, revealing only a pitch-black darkness. My only light source that I could use was my MP3 player. I quickly grabbed a small device from my backpack, turned it on, and shone the light illuminating from the screen into the darkness. The darkness just swallowed the light from the device whole, as if it were the opening to the mouth of the demonic creature I had faced the previous night. I felt around the edges for some sort of ladder or anything that could safely guide me into the open mouth of darkness. Luckily, I felt something wooden just inches in the opening. A wooden ladder that I hoped was sturdy enough to guide me into what seemed like the entrance to hell. I decided to test the deepness and dropped my empty backpack into the hole, hearing the backpack collide against the ground after a couple seconds. I estimated the deepness to be about 10 feet, and even though I had no idea where the passage led, I could care less. It was better than just sitting and waiting to die in that room. With caution, I eased myself into that hole slowly, taking light steps on that wooden ladder. The ladder was surprisingly sturdy, so I carefully stepped down the ladder until I finally came to the bottom of the secret passage, where my backpack laid along the cold ground. Once I was settled onto the ground, the first thing that I caught in the passage was that horrid smell. The smell was just horrible, like a mixture of a damp cellar and death. I gagged multiple times attempting to put on my backpack, using the only light that I had from the opening 10 feet above the ladder. Once my backpack was on, I used one of my hands to cover my mouth and nose, while using my other hand to use my MP3 player as a guide. I could only see one direction to go, and that was straight. I had no idea how far that tunnel went or where in God's name it led, but I wanted answers, and seeing that going back up would do me no good, I entered the darkness, hoping that passage was my first step to answers of what had been branded on my arm, and who the hell Rosie really was. The tunnel extended about 20 feet, until it came to a stop where another wooden ladder extended 10 feet to the surface. With these, I climbed up the ladder until I came to the surface, where another wooden door was closed. I pushed against the door, but all I felt was resistance. That didn't surprise me, considering that this passage was old, and wherever this led was probably covered with all sorts of things. Grass, moss, hell, it could be covered with a ton of heavy things for all I knew. I wasn't going to let that stop me, so with every bit of force that I had, I pushed up on the door, until it burst open, covering me with dirt and dust. The passage had led me to some sort of shack, but it wasn't until I showed my MP3 player within the shack that I realized what I had wandered into. Inside the shack was a skeleton strapped to a table by its limbs, and its entire head severed clean from its shoulders. There was also knives, hatchets, and black candles within the room, which I immediately recognized as a demonic ritual ground. I was horrified by the sight and quickly took my leave, breaking the door of the shack open and stepping out into the backyard of my grandparents' house, inches from Death Mountain. I attempted to shake the images I had just seen moments before from my mind, but to this day, those images still haunt me. But those images are nothing compared to many other things that I had seen, things I still have yet to tell. Outside the shack, I looked around, only to see Sunnydale, dead, quiet. It was as if the entire town had just been abandoned, without a single trace of anybody. No cars, no life, no nothing. The town was just completely dead. There was no breeze in the air, only an eerie heaviness that made my spine quiver. I was alone in a town inhabited by God knows what, and the only place I couldn't go was Death Mountain. All I could do is sit there and wonder where to go next for answers to where the hell everybody went. There was nobody around to ask, so I couldn't ask anyone, and once they saw the mark on my arm, they'd probably run anyway. I was stuck, until I saw the sun shining down on me, being blocked by something. Something that intrigued me. The sun was being blocked by the cross emblem above the abandoned church just 2 houses away from my grandparents' house. I couldn't explain it at that time, but for some reason, I felt as if the sun were leading me to the church. And seeing I had nowhere else to go, I decided to investigate. The question was, What the hell was I looking for in the house of God? What I hoped for was any clue to what the hell was going on. It took me less than a minute to even make it to the church, seeing I was 2 houses away from my grandparents. As I grew closer to the church, I couldn't explain it, but I felt as if I was safe there, and that demon that had attacked me before couldn't get me now. The house of God was a place intended to be a place of holy lecture and protection from the wicked, but at this point, I really wondered if I was safe, or if I was walking straight into a trap. Either way, I was determined to find something, some clue to what the fuck was going on around in this town. Why was everyone gone? Why had that creature branded on my arm? Why was there a secret passage between my grandparents' house and a demonic ritual ground? I had no idea what to expect as I swung open the doors into the ancient building.